you're in prison, try to recognize how difficult it is to do anything. Over 50% of all people in prison who are married experience divorce within a few years, right? Over 50%. So if you're married going into prison, you're going to get divorced pretty soon, right? And so how do you access justice when you're in prison? Now we're out here, you know, sending a text, making a phone call, sending an email, jumping on Zoom, even sending a fax. Y'all know what a fax is? Not like something's true, not like a fact, but facts, a fax machine. Well, none of that's really available. So try to imagine trying to either fight your criminal case or trying to make a civil rights claim, right? You're in solitary confinement. How do you get anything done in solitary confinement? You're by yourself for 23.5 hours a day until you can go outside and exercise for a bit, usually by yourself as well, but you get to see people along the way. Big problems in terms of accessing justice. Back in the day of Martin Sostre, people would get put in solitary confinement for helping other people with their case, to write a petition, a habeas petition to try to get out of prison, etc. So people would get punished severely. Mumia Abu-Jamal, who wrote this book, Jailhouse Lawyers, said, marshaled some statistics to show that people who helped other people in prison were some of the most severely punished people in prison, right? In that book, Jailhouse Lawyers, right? So we have this situation where, you kind of might feel ambivalent about other people in prison helping, their fellows, because you got people like this, people who don't know anything about the law, but who are just kind of scamming, versus people like Martin Sostre, who knows more about prison law than I ever will. I mean, this guy had multiple litigation on multiple fronts, solitary confinement, trying to worship religion, getting medications, etc. Mumia Abu-Jamal as well, probably the most famous person in an American prison, right? Muslim individual who has been really outspoken on this topic. And of course, the Columbia Human Rights Law Review puts this out, understanding that having proper representation is a human right. The right to counsel is something that implicates all sorts of human rights issues. I do want to emphasize a couple of things, again, about the equality piece. People in prison have different hurdles to cross in order just to bring a claim in federal court. And this is not something you would have to do, for example, or you would have to do. If you want to file a claim in federal court, you just pay the money and you file a claim, right? People in prison, it doesn't work like that. There is what's known as the Prison Litigation Reform Act, PLRA, which puts all kinds of hurdles for someone who's in a penitentiary or imprisonment situation just to get to federal court, right? There's restrictions on the lawyer fees that a lawyer can earn for you. You have to exhaust all the administrative remedies that there are. So in other words, you have to go and tell on the people who are guarding you, your guards, tell on the guards that see you day in and day out every day to the prison. You have to go tell on them. The people who watch you every day, now they know, and you're oftentimes going to be it happens a lot. They retaliate against you. They're pissed off. You're giving them a yellow slip in their file. And this is not very, if things were not so great to begin with, you've made things very much worse for yourself by filing a grievance with the prison in order to get some remedy. But you can't get to federal court unless you file that grievance. And you can't get to federal court unless you follow the dictates of the PLRA. If you're looking for habeas corpus relief, you have to also clear the hurdles of the AEDPA law, the Anti-Terrorism and Effective Death Penalty Act, which puts further restrictions in place. And what I'm trying to say is that in terms of equality, people in prison have to go through far much more than we do to file the same claim. If you want to file a free exercise claim, for example, and someone in prison wants to do the same, they have to go through much more than you do, right? They have to go through much more. And if they're wrong 3 times, you're never going to get hurt again, right? If you lose 3 times, right, there's the 3 strikes provision in the PLRA. You're out of luck permanently, right? So these are some of the issues that affect people in prison in terms of accessing justice. Now, I got one more for you. So let's say you've jumped through the exhaustion remedies with the prison. You've managed to get a lawyer or help to file a claim. You scraped up the money to file, and you have an injunction. You're trying to ask the court, please stop the prison from putting me in solitary confinement. That's the claim, right? Or please stop them from doing this or that. Well, here's the thing. In some instances, what the prison can do is just up and transfer you, get you out of that unit, right? So they can do some wrongdoing and then turn around and transfer you out of that unit. And what does that do? Is that kills that claim for injunction, for injunctive relief. It kills it. Why? Because they say that person is no longer suffering that violation at that facility, so we're going to dismiss this claim, right? So just try to imagine that. Your life just got flipped upside down because they transferred you. That means all your stuff has to follow you. If you have mail, that has to follow you. Medications, you may be taking some sort of therapy or counseling, religious programming, educational, all of that's done. You may have a job, established goodwill, all of that's, and you've got to go be the new kid on the block again, the cell block, right? And so your whole life gets turned upside down. And on top of that, the end result is that your case gets dismissed. Just try to imagine that. Your case gets dismissed. So we're talking multiple levels of injustice. One, the initial wrongdoing done against the person, the initial wrongdoing. And then 2, transferring that individual to cover up the wrongdoing legally. And then 3, no one is ever brought to justice for that wrongdoing. What do you think number 4 is? What injustice number 4 is? That prison is still able to continue the wrongdoing. Does everybody understand what I'm saying? That prison can continue doing the wrongdoing. All they got to do is just transfer someone out, ship someone out. And that claim for injunctive relief can be mooted, is what they say. That's the word. It's the doctrine of mootness. It moots the case. So trying to recognize sort of the hardships that someone in prison endures just to access justice. And I want you to just recognize that this happens in 2023 United States of America, that someone can have a viable claim before a federal court and have it exterminated or just have that dismissed just because prisons know that they can have that thing dismissed by transferring you. And you're stuck having gone through all those hurdles, spent that money, done everything required to get into federal court. Now you're left holding nothing. You have nothing left. This thing is determined for me to log in as a UI guest, wireless. It is relentless, right? I wish my students were like this studying place. Wow.